Hello, welcome to the hint video for problem set number two. And in this problem, I'm going to have you download GDP data, and we're going to graph it, and we're going to analyze it. And the agency that is in charge of collecting GDP data is called the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA. Now, I know that I have you, I instruct you to go to the BEA site here, but I'm going to change that a little bit. I want you to go to another site called FRED, F-R-E-D, Federal Reserve Economic Data. So if you go into Google and simply type in FRED and then St. Louis Fed in Google, you're going to come to this site right here. And that's where we're going to download the data. And the reason why is this is more user-friendly, this website, than the BEA. Now let's look at what we're going to be doing. I'm in 2A, I ask you to use Excel. Please graph the annual change in real GDP. Um, and this is quarterly data that we're going to graph the annual change from 1990 to 2014. Now I know I say 2014, but just take the most recent data that they have available. And then I'm going to have you graph annual changes in imports and exports from 1990 to 2014. And again, just take the most recent data. So let's gather all three data series, real GDP, real exports, real imports, at the same time. So at the Federal Reserve Economic Data site, in the search box, I'm going to type in real GDP, and I'm going to click search. And it's going to be the very first one we want, billions of chain $2009. Now that's a way of telling you that this data is adjusted for inflation, which means it's real GDP data. And I'm going to click on this right here and click on add to graph. And boom, look, the data is nicely graphed for you all the way back to 1950. Now we want only to 1990. Now keep in mind, if we want to have the annual change, percent change, and include 1990, that means we have to have 1989 data. So I'm going to see this horizontal slide tool here. I'm going to just click on it and slide it over until I'm right before 1990 on the left-hand side. And you can ooh, I went a little too far. I'm sorry. Let me just adjust this again. And I'm going to move this to right before 1990. Perfect. And notice how in this graph we've got these gray shaded areas. This is called recession shading. These are periods of time where GDP growth was negative, and those are recessions. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to click on Add Series. Let's add exports. And in the key word search box, I'm going to click in there, and I'm going to type in real exports. And we want quarterly billions of chain $2009 right there. So it's the third one from the top. Click on that and simply click on Add Series. And as you can see, the data has been added. And all we've got to do now is add imports. So I'm going to click on Add Series again. In the search box, click in there. I'm going to type in real imports. And we want quarterly billions of 2009 chain data. Click on that one. Click Add Series. And there we've got it. We've got our three data series. And so notice how the green line, which is our imports, are above the red line, which are our exports, which means we've been running a trade deficit for many, many years. So anyways, let's download this data. Now, how do you download the data? Well, over on the left-hand side, it says download data. So I'm going to click on that, and it immediately downloads it into an Excel graph. I'm going to click on that file that's just downloaded, and there you've got the data right here. You could see that I've got my quarterly date series in the first column, then I've got GDP, exports, and then imports. Now let's do the transformation for GDP first. So I'm going to insert a column. And first of all, let me click on Enable Editing here. And I'm just going to show you how to do the very first calculation, and you could do the rest in Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert a column here, and you could do that by clicking on the column C, highlights the entire column. I'm going to right click on the shaded area, and then click on Insert, just to have a blank column between my GDP and my exports. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom of the series to the, this is the fourth quarter of 2015. And here's my GDP data. Now this is real GDP data. Now, this is in dollar form. We want the annual percent change. Now how do you do the annual percent change? The annual percent change is the fourth quarter, in this case the fourth quarter of 2015, divided by the fourth quarter of 2014. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to this empty cell here. I'm going to type in equals. I'm sorry, equals. And I'm going to take the most recent data, and I'm going to click on divided by, and I'm going to divide it by the same period in the previous year. In other words, the fourth quarter of 2014. And all I'm going to do is simply subtract 1 from this and hit enter. Now, it says 0%. That's only because it's 2 decimal places. I'm going to change that to 1 decimal place. I'm going to change it to 2 decimal places. And I do that clicking on the Home tab, and under the number group, I'm going to click on the expand. So it increased basically 2%. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to change that to a percent form. It's a decimal form right now. I'm simply going to click on this percent icon right here, and I'm going to increase it 2 more decimal places. So it really increased 1.89%. And that's how you set up the formula. Now, all you've got to do now is autofill it up, and you have your data series, and then all I want you to do is to graph it. And you could do the exact same thing for exports and imports. Insert a column, put in this formula that we see where's the formula? Right here. And that's going to give you your annual percent change. And I want you to use Excel, graph it here, and graph the same thing. But in 2B, I want you to have exports and imports on the same graph. Okay. Now for 2C, in the U.S. Department Commerce National Income and Product Accounts tables, why are the values reported differently for nominal and real GDP? So basically, I'm asking you, why do we have a difference between nominal and real? So just define nominal, define real. Why is there a difference, and why do we care? Why do we need to have real data, real GDP data? Or in other words, why do we need data that's adjusted for inflation? And then finally, 2D, do you see anything of particular interest in the NIPA tables? Now, in this case, I want you to go to the BEA. So I'm going to go back to my web browser. I'm just going to type in bea.gov. Here's the BEA site. And under U.S. economic accounts, you see where it says gross domestic product? Click on that. And in the right-hand corner, upper right-hand corner, no, I'm sorry, in the left-hand corner, where it says news release, gross domestic product, click on that link. And now in the right-hand corner where it says full releases and tables, click on that. And this brings up the latest news release. Now I want you to go through this data. I know it's several pages long, but I want you to try to use what you know from our talk of GDP and just look through the data. And I said, do you see if anything of particular of interest in this? So is there anything in this report that you find interesting? And I just want you to describe that in what is interesting, why do you find it interesting, and just basically describe that in 2D. And I believe that's it for problem 2. So as typical, email me if you have any questions.